Getting out of consumer debt is the single most powerful step you can take to secure your financial future. It is a game changer for your peace of mind. In a world where credit cards and loans are handed out like candy, it's easy to find yourself buried in debt, living paycheck to paycheck, and we've all been there, swiping credit cards a bit too often. And before you know it, the debt starts piling up. But what most people don't realize is that every day you stay in debt, you're sacrificing your peace of mind, your ability to invest in other opportunities, and ultimately your financial freedom. So staying in debt doesn't just weigh on your wallet, it holds you back from living the life you really want. So let's explore some actionable strategies to break free from consumer debt and reclaim control over your finances, not just for the short term, but especially for the long term. So here we go. If you're someone who's looking to improve your money and finance game, then the Complete Money Playbook channel is the place for you. So please subscribe. We put out great content every week. So I have a list of the top 11 things that, in my humble opinion, are essential to getting your financial journey heading in a positive direction. And this one is number one, and honestly, it is the most absolutely important thing you can do. You have to get out of consumer debt. No more credit card debt. And this does not mean you can never use a credit card again if you have the discipline to do so. No more auto loans or other toy loans like boats, RVs, motorcycles, trailers, and we can go on and on. We also need to get rid of those student loans. We need to get rid of any personal loans, payday loans, anyone that you owe money for, then you need to get those loans paid off. Now, a mortgage is the one kind of loan that I'm okay with. It's a different type of loan. It's for an asset that actually appreciates, and we're going to talk about that on another day. But for now, we got to get you out of consumer debt. I am not naive enough to think that this can happen overnight, or that sometimes life happens and you need to borrow money for a car. That's how you get to work. But in this case, maybe you need a less expensive car with a lower payment that you can pay off a lot sooner than later. So I think sometimes with people, you get that case of keeping up with the Joneses, and it keeps you in debt because, to be honest with you, your stuff's too nice. Maybe where you live's too nice. Maybe your car's too nice. Maybe you have toys that you can't afford. And so we've got to get you out of this consumer debt situation, thinking about, well, I can afford the payments. But because you're affording the payments, you're paying interest to someone else. And we got to find a way for you to start earning interest and not paying interest. So I have a question for you. What is the most important number when determining your wealth in the future? So what do you think that might be? Believe it or not, it's not how much money you make. I know lots of wealthy people that never actually made a lot of money. It is 100% how much money you can save and invest. And the sooner and younger you can do that, you take the benefits of long-term compounding, and it's amazing how it's going to work. So as much as looking at your budget or your spending plan or your balance sheet is no fun at all, you just can't ignore it. And looking at your finances on a regular basis, you can't let lifestyle creep set in, or just, like I said, spending money on things you just can't afford. So how do we do this? There's a handful of different ways, but here are some suggestions that I have on how you can aggressively get out of consumer debt, and aggressively is being the key word, because you really, truly have to get out of consumer debt. So in a perfect world scenario, we would be what I call on the 50-30-20 plan, which would be 50% for your needs, 30% for your wants, and 20% right off the top for savings and investing. And for now, if you are in a high consumer debt situation, a negative net worth, we're not doing the saving and investing. We're doing the debt reduction, and we're going to create no more consumer debt and building up a little cash for a safety net, a rainy day fund, an emergency fund. You, again, call it whatever you want. I think people get too worried about and caught up what it is. And even still, part of that 30% for your wants might have to have some of that money pushed into getting rid of this consumer debt. So we're going to get on a heavy duty budget right off the bat. And so that is item number one, which I know is no fun. We're going to have to create a budget. So what does that entail? We have to track all your expenses so you understand where your money is going. And by tracking your spending, this helps identify where we can cut back. Setting that budget, we're going to allocate income towards necessary, expensive, and really how much money we can spend each month reducing these debts. And you've got to stick to the budget. So if you're doing this by yourself or you're doing this with another person, you're going to have to get on the same page with this. It's one of the biggest reasons why I help couples sell homes that are getting divorced. And we want to prioritize our debt payments. So we talk about prioritizing our debt payments. You're starting to hear terms like debt snowball and debt avalanche. And what do these actually mean? So you hear this term debt snowball method. And what that one is paying off the smallest debts first while making minimum payments on other larger debts. And then every time you pay off a small debt, you start using that money to then go to the next one and the next one and the next one. The avalanche method, where you see people, is they will list their debts by highest interest rate paid rather than highest balance. And again, I don't care which way we do it or how you want to do it. I'm a big fan of sort of a little bit of both. If you list out all your debts like we talked about in last week's video, and we know how much the balances are, We know how much the interest rates are. We know how much the payments are. Sometimes just paying off a small one feels like a big win. And if you're someone that has tons of consumer debt at high interest rates, but you've got some money sitting in a savings account, I'm going to be the first one to say, let's grab that money out of that savings account, start paying off these debts, because if you're earning 0 or really small percent interest on that money in the savings, but you're paying massive amounts on interest rates on your debts, then why do we have savings sitting there in cash? If we need to get some money, well, then we'll have to go back on some sort of debt thing. But for now, let's get some of these paid off. And again, however you want to do it is fine. Sometimes, again, paying off some smaller ones, getting a win to feel like you're doing something, that's great. So another term you're going to start to hear a lot is consolidating your debt. And so what does debt consolidation loans mean? What they're doing is they're telling you to take a whole pool of loans and put them into one loan, where maybe you're getting a lower interest rate and you just have one payment to one place. And so when I drive around in my car, SoFi home loans, you hear them all the time talking about debt consolidation. This goes back into, we're going to talk about next week about refinancing your home, and be very careful about that. But they're trying to simplify the process for you. And in some cases it works. Or even like you'll hear terms like, let's balance transfer one credit card to another credit card. And they tell you they'll give you 0 interest. But they give you 0 interest, let's say for 6 months. And if you haven't paid off the entire loan balance in that 6-month period, they're going to go right back to the beginning and back charge you interest for the whole 6 months. So when you read these things, you have to know what the small print is. And a lot of times, maybe doing a balance transfer on a credit card or doing some of these debt consolidation loans can work and be smart to do. But if you don't read the fine print and you don't understand what it actually is that you're doing, in the long term, you think you did something smart and it ends up being worse because, like I said, they're backdating old finance charges, and you really don't want to have that happen. So if you don't understand how this works, reach out. We'll talk to you more about that. If you're someone who's trying to improve and win at the game of money, click the link in the description below where you get access to our free Excel spreadsheet that will help you put your budget together. So one thing I think people don't realize they can do a lot of times with finance companies is negotiate for a lower interest rate. So whether that is on a credit card or a personal loan, you can sometimes get them willing to say, we don't want to lose you as a customer if you're going to transfer all your debt somewhere else. So sometimes they'll be willing to say, hey, let's lower that interest rate, especially if you've made all your payments on time. Maybe you've had some sort of financial hardship and you could talk to them about that, saying, hey, I want to keep making my payments, but is there any way we can reduce that interest rate to kind of help me out a little bit? So if you can do that, obviously, then each month, more of your payment's going to go towards that principal than it is the interest. So that'll help you out. And then you'll be able to potentially use some of that money to pay off some of these other debts. So another huge way, of course, in getting this debt consolidation taken care of is increasing your income. And I know you hear that one all the time. People make it sound, oh, it's just so easy. Just go ask your boss for a raise or do some sort of side hustle. But there are other ways you can earn some income. I use my kids as examples all the time. But for example, he had just items around his house that he wasn't using, tools. Once in a while, I'll get a client that just has stuff laying around their house they don't want, and he'll come pick them up. And then he'll sell them online. And then he just used that money to pay off debts or build up his savings account or pay extra towards his house payment. However you can do it, that you can figure out a way to increase your income, make a little bit more money, but don't use it for unnecessary things. Use it to get those debts paid off, which leads right into the next thing, unnecessary expenses. So when we went through our budget, we want to cut back on non-essential spending. So things like going out to dinner and entertainment. And if you look at your list of everything you're subscribed to, maybe there's a lot of things on the list that you're not using anymore. Learning how to shop smarter, maybe using coupons or discount codes, or just figuring out what am I spending money on that I don't really need to. And of course, it sucks up front. I'm not sitting here saying this is fun and easy. I'm just saying that if we want to get our long-term finance game in order, we got to get our spending and our debt under control. And this is one of the ways in the short term, unfortunately, that we have to do it aggressively, actively figure these things out so that we could do it. So once we've gotten to a point where we've gotten rid of most of these debts and we're starting to feel like, hey, we can start building up some cash reserves. Again, you hear that term emergency fund, call it whatever you want to. We want to start building up some cash reserves so that when something happens, like we get a flat tire or had some last minute health concern or something comes up, we're able to use cash rather than go back on that credit card. So we want to figure out a way to build up enough cash. And when we do build up enough cash, then figure out a way to put it into some sort of high yield savings account so we can earn a larger chunk of interest. Now, if compounding start working for us than against us. And yeah, start small. It's not going to feel like a lot of money, but what we want to at some point avoid is using credit card for unexpected expenses and using cash and money to help us do that. So if a lot of this seems excessive and overwhelming trying to figure this out, this is part of what this channel is about. You can seek professional help. There are credit counselors out there. There are people like me that eventually we're going to start to teach some courses on exactly how this works. But if you're not sure how money and finance work, and eventually we're going to do a video about like what I feel are the most important finance terms you need to know so that you understand the basics of what you're doing, perfect. But for now, like I said, if we can't get our debt paid off and start controlling what our spending is, we're not ever going to get ahead financially. Once we've worked this hard and we've gotten to a point where the debt is paid off, we've built up a little bit of an emergency fund, what do we not want to do? Create new debts. So maybe you need to pause your credit cards. Maybe you need to stop using your credit cards altogether. Maybe you need to close out a few accounts. I know for me, I literally have one personal credit card. I have one for my businesses that I use for credit cards, so I have separate cards for those things so I can leave them there. But if you literally got to a point where your bills were on automated payments, you knew what your budget was, and then you were having to actually spend cash out of your pocket versus using a credit card for something, it's amazing how differently it would be. And I know for me, when I talk about budgets, in a perfect world, what I would get people to be able to do is do their budget on a pad of paper. So you're writing all this stuff down, and you literally would have to go old school and write checks. I can't tell you how many people I know in their 20s and 30s have never actually written a check, but it's amazing how much more your spending gets paid attention to when you're writing checks and you're paying with cash and you're feeling the pain of spending money more than just when everything's on auto payment and swipes and credit cards and debits and all that kind of stuff. So I realize that's kind of a Pollyanna thing to say that you're going to do this on paper and write checks and cash, but you have to pay attention because you've worked this hard now to get to that point, and we don't want to go backwards. So this leads me right into my last thing, is trying to find a way to stay motivated. So when I talked about 30-day, 90-day, 1-year goals and dreams in your finances, set milestones. You know, when you pay off that one small debt, or you paid off something with the largest credit card balance, or you're now completely out of consumer debt, it's going to make you feel great. Celebrate them, not by going out and spending a bunch of money and putting yourself back in debt, but just realize that it is a long process. It is a long journey. And I know when I talk this about people all the time is when you're playing a game that you hopefully start in your 20s and you're going to retire some days in your 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, whatever it is. And again, young people, you're going to live even longer than your parents and grandparents lived. It doesn't always feel like winning because the game is so long. Put daily reminders out there. Maybe you have a debt payoff chart. Figure out a way so that you can have these small victories and you're going to feel good to help you be able to stay motivated to keep along this journey. So by combining all these strategies that we talked about and staying committed and motivated to your plan, you can make significant progress and you can get out of consumer debt and you can win at the game of money and finance. But just know, it doesn't happen overnight. It's a slow, long journey, just like it will be when you build up money in the long term. And we're going to talk about how you can get there to help you stay motivated so that you can and you will win at the game of money. I hope you're enjoying the content we're putting out here on the Complete Money Playbook. And if you want to know more about me, check out the video we did introducing to you what the Complete Money Playbook is all about and what this channel is going to help you do.